The scream tore through the night air, shattering the eerie silence that had settled over the abandoned city. Sarah whirled around, weapon raised, heart pounding as the snarls of the undead grew louder. Her eyes frantically scanned the darkness, searching for the source of the cry. She had to find the others, had to get them to safety before the horde descended. For weeks, they'd survived barricaded in this crumbling office building, clinging to the hope that help was on the way. But the radio fell silent days ago, and the dwindling supplies made it clear rescue wasn't coming, not this time. They thought the zombies were slow, stupid creatures that could be easily outmaneuvered, but something had changed. The infected were evolving, becoming faster, deadlier, more cunning with each passing day. The safe haven they had fought so hard to protect was compromised, and now they had no choice but to run. Sarah burst through the doors, joining the others as they raced down the deserted streets. Shadows flickered all around them, the ragged breath of the undead growing ever closer. They had to keep moving, had to reach the bridge that spanned the murky river. Beyond lay a rumored sanctuary, a chance at survival. But as they neared the bridge, Sarah's blood ran cold. The streets were choked with a seething mass of infected bodies, blocking their path. Trapped with no way out, she made a choice, one that would haunt her for the rest of her days. She shoved the others forward, yelling for them to run, while she turned back, holding off the horde with desperate fury. Sarah fought with every ounce of strength, slashing and shooting, but the zombies kept coming, a relentless tide of gnashing teeth and clawing hands. She lured them away, buying the others precious time to reach the bridge. But as the last of her companions disappeared from view, she knew in her heart this was the end. Exhausted and wounded, Sarah stumbled backward until her back hit a wall. The infected were closing in, surrounding her. Their gleaming eyes and twisted faces filled her vision, and she squeezed her eyes shut, preparing for the inevitable. Suddenly, a noise made her look up. A figure emerged from the shadows, a stranger with a hard gaze and a weapon in his hand. Sarah braced for the killing blow, but instead, the man reached down and hauled her to her feet. "You're still alive," he said in a gruff-voiced howl. I held them off," she stammered, too stunned to comprehend what was happening. "There's a bridge, the others. They made it across." The man's eyes narrowed. Did they now? He scanned the horde, then fixed Sarah with a considering look. "You're pretty handy with that blade. Maybe you can be of use to me." He didn't wait for her reply, just turned and began to make his way through the undead horde. Sarah stared after him, bewildered for a moment before hurrying to catch up. She had no choice but to trust this stranger if she wanted to survive. As they fought side by side, Sarah couldn't help but wonder who he was and where he had come from. But one thing was clear: whatever lay ahead, it would be a journey into the unknown, one that would test the limits of her endurance and force her to make impossible choices. Sarah steeled herself, taking a deep breath. Drawing her weapon, she followed the stranger into the swarming darkness, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them beyond the bridge. Sarah's sacrifice had bought the others time to escape, but at a devastating cost. Injured and alone, she crawled through the shadows. As the undead closed and hearing a noise, she braced for the end, only to find the stranger a hardened survivor named Marcus, who had a plan to escape the city. Marcus appraised Sarah with a critical eye, her bloodied clothes and haggard expression telling a tale of narrow survival. He offered her a hand, pulling her to her feet, and Sarah sagged against him, grateful for the support. "You shouldn't have come back for me," she said breathlessly. The corners of Marcus' mouth turned up slightly. "You're welcome," he said dryly. "Can't very well leave a fellow survivor to the wolves, now can I?" Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but the sound of a distant roar cut her off. Marcus' eyes narrowed as he scanned the darkness. "We need to move," he said, gripping her arm. "There's a bridge across the river. If we can make it there, we might have a chance." Sarah nodded, wincing as the motion sent a jolt of pain through her side. They pushed forward through the shadows, weaving between the shambling undead. Marcus leading the way with a calm efficiency that belied the danger all around them. As they neared the bridge, Sarah felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly extinguished by the sight of the horde blocking their path. Hundreds of the infected were gathered on the other side, weapons glinting in the moonlight. A tight knot of soldiers stood guard at the center of the bridge, their rifles pointed outward. "Trapped," Sarah whispered despairingly. "There's no way through." Marcus studied the scene, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then a plan began to take shape in his mind. If we timed it right, he said, we might be able to slip through the gaps between the patrols. I'll take the lead, you stay close, and follow my lead. Sarah nodded, steeling herself for the perilous crossing. She didn't know this man, or if she could trust him. But at this point, she had no other choice. Marcus' grip tightened on his weapon. All right, he said, let's go. They moved swiftly and silently, darting between the infected and the soldiers with a speed and grace that belied the danger. They were almost halfway across when disaster struck. A stray bullet whizzed past Sarah's head, narrowly missing its mark, and the soldiers sprang into action. Gunfire erupted as the soldiers opened fire on a horde, the bullets finding their mark with deadly precision. But in the chaos, Sarah and Marcus were caught in the crossfire. Separated by the chaos, Sarah could only watch in horror as Marcus was struck down. No, she cried, surging forward, but strong hands grabbed her, pulling her back. They're overrun, she heard a voice yell. There's nothing we can do. Sarah's eyes welled with tears as she watched Marcus disappear beneath the crushing weight of the undead. Devastated, she allowed the others to lead her away, even as her heart screamed for her to go back. As they reached the other side of the bridge, Sarah turned her gaze back to the carnage, a single resolve hardening within her. She would make it to that sanctuary, even if it killed her. And when she got there, she'd make damn sure the ones responsible paid for what they'd done. With Marcus gone, Sarah and the others fought their way through the nightmarish streets, battling not just the undead, but other desperate survivors who would do anything to make it out alive. At the river's edge, they faced their greatest challenge, yet a heavily guarded checkpoint, manned by soldiers who had strict orders to let no one pass. Exhausted and battered, they approached the checkpoint, wearily, weapons at the ready. The soldiers eyed them warily, fingers tightening on the triggers of their rifles. Stop right there, one of them barked. You know the rules, no one crosses without authorization. We have to get across the river. Our camp was overrun. The woman beside Sarah pleaded, we have nowhere else to go. The soldier's expression hardened. I'm sorry, but orders are orders, no one passes. Sarah's grip tightened on her weapon as she saw the others exchange panicked looks. The soldiers would gun them down without hesitation. They were trapped with no hope of escape until an idea began to form in Sarah's mind. Stepping forward, she raised her hands in a gesture of surrender. You're right, she said. We shouldn't be here, but maybe we can make a deal. The soldier eyed her suspiciously. What kind of deal? I have information that could be valuable to you. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Information about the infected, how they're evolving, how to stop them. The soldier's eyes narrowed as he considered her words. If this information is legit, it might be worth something. All right, he said. What do you want in exchange? Sarah took a deep breath and steeled herself for what she was about to do. She knew it would haunt her forever. But at this point, she was out of options. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the faces of her companions, their expressions a mix of hope and unease. I want safe passage across the river and a place in your camp, she said. That's the deal. The soldier hesitated for a long moment, then jerked his head in a curt nod. Deal, he said, but I'll be watching you. As the gate swung open, Sarah stepped through, hardly daring to believe they had made it. The others followed close behind, but there was a newfound unease in their eyes. Sarah knew she had betrayed their trust, and that the consequences of her actions would reverberate long after they reached the other side. They crossed the river in tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they finally reached the other side, Sarah's heart stank. The camp was in ruins, the telltale signs of a brutal attack visible everywhere. What happened here? One of the others asked in a hushed voice. We were overrun, the soldier replied grimly. We pulled back to regroup, but our numbers are dwindling. Sarah's stomach clenched as she realized their supposed sanctuary was lost. They were out of options, out of time. With nowhere left to go, they would have to press on into the unknown. As they followed the soldier deeper into the ruins, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a grave mistake, one that would have devastating consequences for them all. But with the undead at their heels and the fate of her companions resting on her shoulders, she had no choice but to keep moving forward. Reeling from the aftermath of Sarah's actions, the group pressed on across the river, only to find their sanctuary in ruins, the victims of a merciless attack. They were out of options and running out of time when they stumbled upon an underground bunker, a potential safe haven, but one shrouded in mystery and danger. As they descended into the unknown, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them, waiting to make their move. The bunker was eerily quiet save for the hum of machinery and the distant echo of voices. The soldier who had escorted them there paused at a heavy metal door, punching in a code before ushering them inside. "Welcome to the refuge," he said gruffly. "The leader, Victor, will want to speak with you." Sarah and the others exchanged uneasy glances, but they had little choice but to follow as the soldier led them deeper into the compound. The refuge was a maze of sterile corridors and guarded checkpoints, and Sarah couldn't help but feel like they were being herded like cattle. Eventually, they were ushered into a cavernous room where a lone figure stood staring out a massive window. The soldier cleared his throat, and the man turned, revealing a stern face and piercing eyes. "Ah, so you're the new arrivals," he said in a smooth voice. "I'm Victor, the commander of this operation." He appraised them coolly, his gaze lingering on Sarah. "I understand you have information that could be valuable to us," he continued. "I'm very interested to hear what you have to share." Sarah swallowed hard, her mind racing as she tried to decide how much to reveal. She knew the stakes were high, and that one wrong move could jeopardize not just her own life, but the lives of her companions as well. "I saw the infected evolving," she began slowly. "They're getting faster, stronger, more coordinated. We barely escaped the last horde." Victor's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "That is concerning," he murmured. "And you believe you can help us deal with this new threat?" Sarah nodded hesitantly. "Yes, I think so." "Excellent," Victor said, a pleased smile spreading across his face. "Then welcome to the refuge, my friends. You'll find we have every resource you could need to weather this storm." He gestured to the soldier who stepped forward, ushering them out of the room. Sarah cast one last uneasy glance at Victor's impassive face before following the others out. As they were led to their quarters, Sarah couldn't shake the sense that something was off about this place. The refuge might provide temporary safety, but she couldn't ignore the niggling feeling that there was more to Victor's operation than met the eye. When they were finally alone, Sarah turned to the others, her expression grave. "We need to be careful," she said quietly. "I don't think we can trust these people." The others nodded solemnly, each lost in their own thoughts. Sarah knew they were all thinking the same thing. If this place wasn't the sanctuary they had hoped for, then where else could they possibly go? With a heavy heart, she turned her gaze to the shadowed corners of the bunker, feeling the weight of their uncertain future pressing down on her shoulders. Whatever lay ahead, she knew it would take every ounce of her strength and determination to survive it. The refuge provided temporary safety, but it came at a price. The leader, a man named Victor, had his own agenda, and he would stop at nothing to keep his operation running, even if it meant betraying those under his protection. Tensions rose as the truth about the sanctuary's dark secrets began to emerge, and Sarah realized she had made a grave mistake in trusting Victor. The bunker was a maze of surveillance cameras and armed guards, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched constantly. One day, while exploring the compound, Sarah stumbled upon a locked door. Her curiosity piqued. She glanced around quickly before slipping inside. What she found on the other side made her heart sink. It was a laboratory filled with a horrifying array of test subjects, all of them infected. The zombies were strapped to tables, their bodies twitching and convulsing as scientists in biohazard suits tended to them. Sarah watched in mute horror as they extracted samples of blood and tissue, her mind reeling with the implications. She was so focused on the gruesome scene that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching until it was too late. Whirling around, she found herself face to face with Victor, a cold smile on his lips. "Ah, Sarah," he purred, "I was wondering when you'd discover our little secret." Sarah's mouth went dry as she struggled to find the words. This is monstrous," he finished for her, his smile whitened. "Necessary. I'm afraid these experiments are crucial to our survival." He gestured to the infected subjects, their agonized moans filling the air. "As you've seen, the infected are evolving. We need to understand how to stop them." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "You can't possibly think this is justified," she whispered. Victor sighed dramatically. "My dear girl, there is no room for morality in this new world, only survival at any cost." He fixed her with a penetrating stare. "You understand that, don't you, Sarah? After all, you've already proven yourself willing to make difficult choices. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized the implication of his words. He knew about the bridge, about the soldiers she had betrayed, her own people. He had been watching her all along. Before she could react, the door burst open, and a horde of the infected came pouring in, savage and ravenous. Their arrival had clearly been planned. Victor swept an arm towards the creatures, his expression impassive. "Take care of our guest," he said coolly. Sarah barely had time to react before the undead were upon her. She fought with everything she had, but they were relentless, surging towards her in an endless tide. As her strength waned, she realized with sinking horror that this was how it would end. But just as the infected were about to overwhelm her, a familiar voice rang out. "Sarah, get down." She didn't hesitate, diving to the floor as a hail of gunfire erupted above her. When the dust settled, she looked up to see a group of her fellow survivors, weapons drawn and faces grim. "It seems our guests have overstayed their welcome," Victor said, mildly. "Dispose of them." The survivors opened fire and chaos erupted as the infected rushed to obey their master's commands. Sarah was caught in the crossfire, ducking and weaving as she tried to make her way to safety. In the end, she had no choice but to make another impossible decision, one that would tear the group apart and leave her questioning everything she thought she knew. Battered and bruised, the survivors fled the bunker, only to find themselves in an even more perilous situation. Stumbling upon a makeshift military outpost, they hoped to find allies, but instead uncovered a shocking truth: the soldiers had been experimenting on the infected, turning them into something far more dangerous and deadly. With their own humanity hanging by a thread, Sarah and the others had to decide whether to trust these twisted protectors or risk venturing out into the unknown. As they approached the outpost, the soldiers eyed them warily. "Weapons. Raise, identify yourselves," one of them barked. "We're survivors," the woman beside Sarah replied. "We were staying at the refuge, but we had to get out." The soldier's expression darkened. "The refuge, huh?" he muttered. "We've been monitoring that place. Bunch of twisted individuals running experiments on the infected." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Experiments," she whispered. The soldier nodded grimly. "Turned them into something far worse than the average walker. Faster, stronger, more coordinated. We've been trying to contain the threat, but it's been an uphill battle." He leveled his rifle at them. "You were gonna have to come with us for questioning." The others immediately protested, but Sarah held up a hand. "No," she said firmly. "If what you were saying is true, we need your help." The soldier studied her for a long moment, then jerked his head in a curt nod. "All right, but no funny business, understand?" As they were escorted into the outpost, Sarah cooled. "To help, but feel uneasy." The soldiers seemed just as hardened and paranoid as Victor's people, and she couldn't shake the nagging sense that they were hiding something. Her suspicions were confirmed when they were taken to an isolated building and ordered to remain inside. A hush fell over the group as they waited with bated breath for what was to come. After what felt like an eternity, the door burst open and a soldier marched in, his expression grim. "We've analyzed the intel from the refuge," he said, "and I'm afraid the situation is even worse than we thought." He gestured to a bank of monitors where images of the infected flickered across the screens. Sarah felt her stomach twist as she saw the twisted creatures attacking with a terrifying efficiency that was clearly the result of extensive experimentation. "These things," he continued, "they are not just zombies anymore. We've discovered that the scientists at the refuge have been splicing their DNA, enhancing their abilities. We're recalling them evolved." A cold dread settled over the group as they took in the implications of this revelation. Sarah's mind raced, trying to process it all. If the soldiers had been monitoring the refuge, then they must have known about Victor's twisted experiments all along. She turned to the soldier, her eyes narrowing. "What errand are you telling us?" The soldier hesitated, then sighed heavily. "The truth is, we've been trying to harness the power of the evolved for our own purposes," he admitted, hoping to create a new breed of super soldier to fight back against the horde. "But it's spiraled out of control. We can stop them." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the horrifying truth. They were trapped between two sides of the same coin. Both the refuge and the soldiers were willing to sacrifice everything, including their own humanity, in the twisted name of survival. With nowhere left to turn, Sarah and the others had to make an impossible choice: trust the soldiers or venture out into the unknown in a desperate bid for freedom. As the weight of their decision settled over them, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if they would ever find a way to escape this nightmare. Reeling from the revelation of the soldiers' experiments, Sarah and the others fled the outpost, racing against time to find a safe haven. But as they journeyed through the blighted landscape, they encountered a new threat: mutated undead creatures that were faster, stronger, and more cunning than anything they had faced before. The Evolved, as the soldiers had called them, moved with a terrifying grace, their enhanced speed and strength making them nearly impossible to outmaneuver. Sarah and the others found themselves in a constant battle for survival, forced to make split-second decisions that would mean the difference between life and death. As they pressed on, the group began to fracture, the strain of their ordeal taking a heavy toll. Tensions ran high, and Sarah could see the trust that had once bound them together beginning to unravel. They were running low on supplies, their wounds slowly draining the last of their strength, and the relentless onslaught of the Evolved showed no signs of abating. Cornered and outnumbered, the group made a final desperate stand, fighting with everything they had left. Sarah's heart raced as she cut down the Evolved, her blade flashing in the dim light. But no matter how many they felled, more took their place, their glowing eyes and twisted features a constant reminder of the horrors they had witnessed. Just when Sarah thought all was lost, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. It was the soldier from the outpost, his weapon raised and his expression grim. "You need to get out of here," he shouted, opening fire on the Evolved. "We'll hold them off as long as we can, but you need to find a way to stop this madness." Sarah didn't hesitate, herding the others towards a narrow alleyway as the soldier and his men provided cover. But as they fled, Sarah couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was wrong. Had the soldier's sudden appearance been a stroke of luck, or was there more to his story? As they stumbled through the blighted streets, exhaustion and despair began to take their toll. Just when they thought they might not make it, they spotted a glimmer of hope, a fortified outpost in the distance. But as they drew closer, Sarah's heart sank. The place was overrun, the telltale signs of a brutal attack all too evident. Huddled in the shadows, they watched in horror as a figure emerged from the outpost, their movement strangely familiar. Dread pooled in the pit of Sarah's stomach as the figure drew closer, and she realized with a sinking heart that it was one of their own, a former companion who had betrayed them all along. The betrayal was a devastating blow, shattering the already fragile trust within the group. As they stared at the familiar face, now twisted with madness and cruelty, Sarah knew that they had reached the end of the line. They were surrounded, cut off from any possible escape, and the revelation of the traitor's true nature had shaken them to their core. With nowhere left to turn, Sarah knew that they would have to make a final stand, a desperate gamble for survival against impossible odds. As the Evolved closed in and the traitor raised their weapon, Sarah steeled herself, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them, knowing that the fate of the world hung in the balance. In a climactic showdown, Sarah faced off against the traitor, a former ally whose thirst for power had consumed them. Locked in a brutal struggle, Sarah was forced to make the ultimate sacrifice to save the remnants of her group. As the final moments ticked away, she held onto the hope that somehow, someway, they would find a way to survive and rebuild in this ravaged world. But with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, Sarah knew their journey was far from over. The traitor advanced menacingly, their features twisted with malice. "You always were a fool, Sarah," they spat, "thinking you could save everyone, that you could make a difference. Well, look where that's gotten you." Sarah steeled herself, her grip tightening on her weapon. "I'm not the one who's lost their way," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging within. "You've become just as much a monster as the ones we're fighting." The traitor let out a harsh laugh. "Monster? No, Sarah, I'm a survivor. I do what's necessary to ensure my own survival, no matter the cost." They raised their gun, the barrel leveled directly at Sarah's heart. and that means getting rid of you. Time seemed to slow as Sarah watched the traitor's finger tighten on the trigger. In that moment, she knew what she had to do. With a burst of speed, she lunged forward, knocking the gun from the traitor's hand. They grappled, each fighting for the upper hand, until finally, Sarah gained the advantage. "This is for everyone you betrayed," she growled, her blade plunging deep into the traitor's chest. The light faded from their eyes as they crumpled to the ground, and Sarah felt a wave of grief wash over her. She had done what was necessary, but the cost had been tremendous. Turning, she surveyed the remnants of her group, battered and bruised, but still standing. They had made it this far, against all odds, and she knew they had to keep going. "We need to find shelter," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And then we need to figure out how to stop this madness, once and for all." The others nodded, their expressions somber. They knew the road ahead would be long and treacherous, but they also knew that they had no choice but to keep moving forward. As they made their way through the blighted streets, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on all that they had been through. The losses, the betrayals, the impossible choices, it had all taken a heavy toll. But somewhere, deep within her, a glimmer of hope still burned. They had to believe that there was a way to end this nightmare, to reclaim the world they had once known. It was a daunting task, fraught with danger and uncertainty, but Sarah knew that they had to try. When they finally reached a fortified building, a makeshift sanctuary in the midst of the chaos, Sarah gathered her companions and spoke with a renewed sense of purpose. "We may be battered, we may be bruised, but we are still standing. And as long as we have each other, as long as we fight for what's right, we have a chance. A chance to rebuild, to reclaim our world, and to stop the evolved once and for all." Her words were met with nods of agreement, and Sarah felt a surge of determination coursing through her veins. They would face the challenges ahead, no matter how daunting, because the alternative was unthinkable. With a deep breath, Sarah led her group into the sanctuary, their eyes fixed on the horizon, where the future, however uncertain, awaited them. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and they were the ones who would have to decide its course.